All right, welcome everybody to According to Andrew number 29. I'm really excited about this one because I have a lot to talk to you guys about today. Um, Today we're going to go over structural integrity in power systems and why they seem to fracture apart. We're going to go over chemical castration and Alan Turing and some of the weird stuff around there. I have one little thing on that. We're going to go over One Punch Man and one of the not so talked about storylines that runs or lessons that run through that show, and we're going to talk about the Treason State Department. Um, and the main focus is going to be the power systems probably. The Treason State Department and chemical castration are going to be pretty short things. So let's do the State Department first, just because um, it needs to be out there. I want it in the forefront so that people can kind of hear this, and then if that's all they want to listen to, can bounce. I was going to share it in the last one, which is I was going to try to keep politics to one day a week, but this is I think very important, um, and I was going to put in that one, but I had just totally blanked on it, and not a lot of people are talking about it. So without further ado, uh, there was a story that came out where the guy in that was in charge of troop deployment in Syria had lied to Trump that they basically Trump had brought the total amount of troops down in that area to only 200 soldiers, and they lied to him and said, "Yeah, we drew down to that many," and that wasn't true. Like they had way more troops there than total. I put a number in here, but I don't think they actually ever mentioned a number, which is so outrageous. Like this dude, oh my gosh, I I want to see this dude's head on a pike. That's like this is unacceptable. Um, he needs to have his head on a pike. He's not allowed to bury it, and his body is left to be rotting outside and picked away by the carrions. That's how this fucking shit should be treated, because this is absolutely unacceptable. Um, but and literally treason and sedition. Like it's unreal. So that's my thoughts on the whole thing. Make sure that you kind of start sharing this, because this kind of really goes to show what, and this will get us into power systems or structural systems as well, where like it's really hard to go into a structure and change it if everything in the structure is against you. Um, sure, Trump made certain mistakes and stuff like that, but like, and at the end of the day, like the buck stops with him, kind of thing. But if you want people to fall in line, you need to start doing some of this stuff. Um, you need to start having people need to start going to jail. Heads need to start rolling, um, because this is just not allowed. Like he just got a bunch of extra soldiers killed for no reason, absolutely no reason. It's it's hard to know if he got more soldiers killed, to be fair, but it it's treason beyond treason. Um, and they were just so cavalier about it. He like bragged about it. That's like the extra layer on the icing on the cake. That's like even more insulting. The fact that he thought it was okay to brag about it and be like, "Oh yeah, I just totally ignored the president." No, not allowed. Um, that was kind of my thoughts on that. Uh, but it's just like the rot is so deep that it's really hard to clean out of the system. Um, so that'll bring us into these power systems. So I was reading the State and Status book, which I am, gosh, I hate that book. But it keeps giving me random good ideas. So I guess I'll keep trudging through it. And one of the things that kind of caught or popped into my mind, let me pull up the what I wrote on it, was the idea that you have these power structures that never seem to get along. So traditionally, so we have the separation of powers in the United States. We have the separation of powers between the executive, judicial, and legislative branches. Um, and this is seen as like a revolutionary thing, and to a certain extent it was. But this idea that there was like no separation of powers, or like basically you didn't have power struggles going on before this time, just like really isn't true. So uh, the classical separation of powers was you had the peasantry, the nobility, and the monarchy. And so the way this power structure worked was you'd have two out of the three usually trying to form a coalition with each other to try to take out the other, or be able to impose their will on the other. So you'll have things like the Magna Carta is a good example where, and kind of the role of each of these groups is, you have the peasantry, which is the most numerous group, therefore they're like kind of your foot soldiers, and you want them on your side, but because they're such a numerous and diverse group, they have a really hard time collectivizing and going and putting their will forth, because there's so many of them that it's hard to kind of get them all on the same page and work towards something. The nobility doesn't have as big of a problem with this. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit, they're going to have, because there's still plenty of them, they're going to have a little bit more trouble collectivizing, but think of it more as like CEOs today, where they kind of work out deals and they can collectivize much easier than the workers it can collectivize. And so the CEOs have a better chance of like getting together, agreeing on something that will make it so that like unions get repressed, and it's harder for the larger group of people to come together and agree on what kind of role that the union's supposed to take if they want to do that thing. And because of that difference in being able to mobilize their will in a particular direction, they have the advantage. And then you have the monarch, who it's the singular focus of the whole thing, but he doesn't have the foot soldiers. He doesn't have the amount of people to be able to enforce anything. So he needs one of the other two people on his side to be able to enforce his will. So this kind of creates this interesting thing where the monarch's kind of constantly, he has the ability to exercise the most power, but is also the most reliant on outside groups. Whereas the peasantry actually have the most power, but don't really have a means to exercise it. And therefore, they usually end up being directed by one of the two main competing power factions, though sometimes they can kind of focus and get stuff done for themselves. Or basically what they'll do is they're like, all right, the peasantry a lot of times are like, we allow ourselves to be used as a tool, but we want these concessions from you guys. And that's generally how, classic favor trading. Well, you want me to help you out with this, then you got to do this for me. And that's kind of how they would get their lot improved in life. So the thing is, these groups at one point are one unified group, right? Because if you just think of the Bears and how Owen's whole structure works, it's basically kind of the whole same thing. You have the king, the monarch, Owen, right? You have the nobles, or like are basically his lieutenants. That's going to be your Coddington Bear, your Mountain Bear, all those people, right? They're kind of what is the quasi-nobility in this. And then you have the peasantry, which is people like me who just support him through monetary donations and things like that, or watch his videos, promote his videos, like the minor little things. He isn't as reliant on, like, we're the base, right? Of the whole structural thing, and we all have a singular. There's no problems, right? We have a singular goal. We're all on the same page about stuff. Everything's working good. Sure, there's the odd gamma here and there, but that's not a big deal. So it. So you have this great structure, and everyone's working towards the same thing. Everything's working great. But then you don't really have these separate groups in this. Like you can kind of delineate them a little bit, but they all are on the same page about everything, which is not how it works when you have this like triple power thing kind of clashing all the time. So, why does that degenerate? Why does it make it? Why does that over time not seem to be to hold? And these different groups kind of create their own identity and then end up opposed to each other for various reasons. Well, I have a couple ideas. So, one second, I gotta get to the correct part. So, okay, so part of it is letting people in. So, this can be immigration. This can just be like overly nice. Like a good example is if Owen wasn't as ruthless about chopping out and banning people as aggressively as he was, then the overall structure would be threatened, right? So everyone's currently like on the same page. This is the direction we're going, and if you want to support me, great. If you don't want to support me, you're out of the structure, right? And that's great. And if anyone comes in that, oh, I already said they're banned. So this keeps it so that everyone's focused on the same thing. Well, as time goes on, if that same level of discipline isn't applied over time, you're going to have this degeneration effect happen where, you'll have more and more people come in, whether it's gammas or just people who don't share the same insight, but for some reason call themselves bears or whatever label you want to put on it, whether it's a nation or, a group or whatever. And so then they are like, well, I think we should go this direction or do this thing. And it's not like them having different ideas is fine, but it's like the difference is if they want to go do like, I think we should do this thing that's like opposed to what your current thing is. It's not necessarily that thing is inherently bad. Sometimes it is. But it's like, but our group is against that thing, or we don't do that thing. So like, if you want to go do that thing, that's fine, but you have to go do it in another group. And that's usually not, well, if that's not enforced, then you're going to end up having this fracturing start to happen over time. On top of that, you have the child problem. So the first generation, everything works great. Then it comes to the second generation, and maybe that works great, but there's always going to be some people that don't slot into the roles that they were born into as well as others, for whatever reason that might be. So then after that, then that's where you might have some, because they aren't slotted into those roles as well as they should be, that's where you maybe have some things where you let in people into the group and the structure that shouldn't be there because they don't have your same values and views, or or they just, the reason people were behind it was because it was focused and it had a direction, and it was and the next generation might not have that same focus or drive or ability to run the structure or fill the task and role that is kind of appointed to them by birth in this example, that the others have. So that's another issue. And then obviously you have the classical cycle of humans where hard times make hard men, which make easy times, which make easy men, which make hard times. So in this, because we had these hard times, and we're able to create this structure, and then the structure got us through hard times or whatever, part of the reason that people give up on some of the traditions and beliefs of of the past and stuff like that, you can do all you want to try to pass down and traditions and this is why we do things and explain it to people, but especially when you get to a certain amount of luster or whatever, people start to forget that. So you just have like a natural degeneration where the threat that was very prominent for your grandparents, like maybe isn't a threat today. It doesn't have the same, you can understand maybe the idea of the threat, but like it's not something that is very obvious to you. it's an abstract. We have to, uh, like the barbarians at the. It was very obvious to your grandparents that letting the barbarians into the gate meant that the city was going to get burned down. But you right now, you just see like a sad crying child that's about to starve to death, and so you decide to let him in. And so like just that visceral like reality, just it's not as ingrained in you. It's like, okay, sure, but like maybe they had it wrong, maybe these people are different. Uh, those kind of things come up because it's not a reality that you've had to face before because of the either wealth of your society, of the structure, because people have followed these traditions, but you've forgotten why you followed them. Even if you do know why you follow them, it's kind of like, well, is that really even a problem anymore today? Like these questions just generally come up after certain amounts of time uh, in a successful society. So on that note, my fraternity has this really great quote that really discusses and I think hits this home really well. And I'm gonna pop up this photo. Yeah, I think this photo over here really embodies that well. So it says, um, we also owe a duty to ourselves. We must not shirk our duty to live clean lives. Both nations and men may well be aware of dissipation. Once a nation rose by thrift and enterprise until it ruled the known world of its time. Then it crumbled and fell. Its foundation had rotted away because its citizens had forgotten the duty they owed to themselves. And so it's like these simple little things where you uh, you forget the fundamentals, you forget the foundation of why the things why you got here, and that naturally happens over time, just because of not having to face those realities on a normal everyday basis. And so unless you have really strict uh, traditions and stuff to make sure that stuff happens, um, you might lose that thing. Actually, this is where Islam probably is a great example, where like Sharia law and stuff like that is so strict and doesn't allow like any flexibility. I guess you could maybe make the argument for like some of the old Islamic or not Islamic Jewish laws too, where it's like, and Jesus kind of came along and he's like, you're focusing on the rule over the spirit of it, right? It's the idea the guy that's praying out in the public to try to get adoration, and it's like you're not going to get a reward in heaven because you already got an earthly reward by through the pride that you were able to generate by seeing like, look, I'm such a good person, right? So that's some of the pitfalls that we got to avoid. But some of these really tough, like you have to follow all the rules, structures, well, they can breed resentment and other issues. That's why we have the tale of the son that runs away and comes back in the Bible as well. These really strict rules help define and control people from doing like the wrong thing, and it's probably a healthier, but it's also a riskier, in a sense, solution to do it like the Christian way, where it's like you got to let people do what they're gonna do, and they're gonna mess up, and you just have to accept that and welcome them back into the fold when they do repent and come back to Jesus. And that's a hard one to do. And I mean, that's why I have this other picture up here. You know, uh, even the apostles, when they were with Jesus, because this is the story of when he calmed the waters, even them, they forgot at times like the power of Jesus and stuff like that. And so, if the apostles that are literally with Jesus, like during a storm, can kind of forget and slip up and make the mistake of like forgetting, or make the mistake of not remembering that God's always with you and everything will be okay kind of thing, then certainly we can slip it up. And after generations and generations of not enforcing these rules or being way too lax on them, or not understanding why they're in place, those things are going to be easier to forget. And so that's why we need to tell these stories, remind people of what's going on. But I think these two stories really kind of help illustrate this kind of idea. Um, what else we got? Um, and so this is why you end up with this splitting. So you have these three different factors that kind of go into causing these rifts over time. So you have people forgetting why they're doing the things they're doing and why the traditions that we have are in place. It's forgetting it's the next generation coming up and not being as well suited to the roles and responsibilities of the institutions and structures that were put in place by the previous generation. And it's by letting people that don't believe in the structure and institutions that are set up or have different modus operandi and um, reasons for reasons and goals that differ from the overall group that you end up starting getting this fracturing over time. So that's kind of covers that. Last couple topics. What do we got? So I did treason. So okay, we'll do chemical castration and then we'll end in One Punch Man because the One Punch Man thing is awesome. So there's this where is it? Alan Turing. So I don't know if you've heard the story of Alan Turing, but Alan Turing was this genius mathematician who created not the Enigma machine, but he created the Turing test is named after him. It's a way to test whether or not an AI is actually transcended and become cognizant, something like that. And I don't know if he invented it. Not important. But he made, so the Germans had the Enigma machine, which was a coding machine that made it so that the Allies couldn't decipher their stuff, and he made a machine to decipher it. They also ended up capturing an Enigma machine, which allowed them to crack the code. But he was very important in that whole thing. So one of the aspects of it is that he turns out to be gay, and the British government, based on the rules of the time, decide to chemically castrate him. And here's a good example of kind of that structure and forgetting why we do certain things. So obviously with modern day sensibilities, this is just beyond the pale, not seen as okay kind of thing. But it's hold up, I gotta find the correct. Here we go. So I think it was okay. So he could have been in prison, which sounds like a gay person's dream, or he could be chemically castrated. So then I read in, and this is just a quick infogalactic glance kind of thing. I read about the chemical castrations. As far as I control, it's more like a birth control than anything else. It kills your libido, makes it so you can't get hard and stuff like that. But it's like reversible. Like if you stop taking the drug, it reverses it, and it like you lose bone density, but it doesn't make it sound like you're suicidal type stuff because he apparently committed suicide. Maybe that one's kind of debated as to like if he committed suicide or if something else weird happened. But you know it's for given the options, like that wasn't really that bad. Like in one aspect, you have to say people were like, oh well, you know he helped you beat the Germans, stuff like how could you do this to him, kind of thing. But that goes back to a previous one I talked about, where a previous episode, which was on justice and how you have rule by rulers or rule by law. And the law says this has to happen. And as we've seen with the modern day, where like the gay stuff has really gotten out of control, you know, this is why these laws and stuff like were in place. And the good example that Owen had recently given was, you know, this whole like I'm anti-gay or like I hate them or whatever. It's like you need to look at it like you would somebody that's on heroin or something like that. It's like You don't want to facilitate them doing destructive behavior to themselves. And so, the fact that this kind of kills your libido and makes it so you can't, like, have gay sex, like, that, like, some people might think that's beyond the pale or whatever, but, like, oh, if your kind of goal is to save someone's soul, as it were, and he's struggling with this kind of thing, like, this seems like a good solution, right? Like, maybe more people should be doing that, like, in the modern day, where they're just, like, if you're struggling with, the, being gay and stuff like that, like, maybe this is a solution for you to kind of get over some of that, impulse control type stuff early on, as you're trying to, get back on the path, as it were. I don't exactly know how safe these drugs are, but, and also, it was a drug that you had to take, orally, like, every day. So, seems kind of, it's like, how would you enforce that if they're not in prison, kind of thing? It's a little weird. But from my opinion, it doesn't seem like it's that bad of a deal, and people make it out to be like this worst thing ever. So I don't know. That's kind of all I had to say on that. Chemical castration, not as extreme as I thought it was. Definitely thought it fried all of your dudes. Also, like, the idea that you can't have kids or whatever, like, you're gay. So, like, why do you even care? Like, the only downside for the gay person is they can't, like, it makes it so that, it seems like it makes it so they can't get hard, so they can't just do dudes all the time. Like, that's the only thing that's changed in your entire life. Because kids were obviously off the table, you're having sex with dudes. So it's really not taking much away from you. It's just preventing the overly self-destruct. Like, imagine being able to take a heroin user takes a drug and they no longer want to have heroin. That seems pretty dope. So I don't know. Kind of my hot take on the whole thing. But you guys let me know what you think. And then lastly, we got, where are we here? We got One Punch Man. So I watched One Punch Man again, with my sister, and it was a blast. And then we watched season 2, which I hadn't seen, which was also a blast. Though that season could have moved along a little bit quicker. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, absolutely great. It's a story about Saitama, and his whole thing is that it's kind of like a play on the, like, it's over 9,000, like Dragon Ball Z, or another good example is video games, where you become so OP in the late game that, like, it stops being fun. You know, it's like he just destroys everything in one punch. That's why it's called One Punch Man. And comedically great, in my opinion. So one thing that I noticed, though, is, okay, so the question is, like, how did he get this powerful? And so Saitama, the way he got this powerful is, for like 3 years straight, or like a year and a half straight, he basically did a rigorous workout routine. He would do 100 push-ups, he'd do 100 sit-ups, he'd do 100 squats, run a 10 kilometers an hour. He wouldn't use AC or a heater, AC in the summer or heater in the winter, and he would have he'd have a good breakfast every day. A banana is fine. That was his workout routine. And you're like, and they make fun of it. They're like, that's all you did? Like, that's just a normal workout routine. But the interesting thing is that you find out kind of later, he's the only one who actually has put in the work, which is, like, baffling. Like, but every character, there might be others, but every character that they actually mention and talk about and give a backstory to has done something to try to cheat the line. And it creates this interesting side story of, or side point of there's no replacing hard work and dedication. So he did the simple, not interesting, boring workout every day, and he became the most powerful man of all time. And I think that's kind of how it's true. Like, we want things to be super exciting and flashy and get there really quick and stuff like that. And that's just not how it is. You do the simple, slow things, grind every single day, and that's how you get to be your greatest self. So the examples are you have Genosa, which is his somebody who's like studying under him, and he's a cyborg. So like the way he gets stronger is he just gets more implants. He doesn't really have to work for it. Um, there a bunch of people are genetically enhanced. They've taken shots or they've done some kind of surgery to become stronger and better than they currently are. So they cheated again. The most recent one, you can eat these monster cells and you become a monster, which gives you more strength and durability and stuff like that. And they all those people just get destroyed as well. So it's kind of interesting. Oh, I just realized there are some people that they show in the show that also work hard and don't try to cheat the line. So I guess it's not exactly true. But overall, like most people that you run into, and especially like anyone that's trying to fight Saitama, has cheated the line. They haven't worked for it, kind of thing. There's a couple side characters that, but they're also usually the people that have worked really hard their entire lives are also very powerful. So there's that aspect to it as well. But it was just kind of something interesting that I had noticed and picked up on when I was watching through it. So that's my little One Punch Man thing. I thought this was a good one. I got to do a big thing and then a couple little small things here throughout the whole thing, and they didn't all tie together, but I didn't want to, leave these and not get to talk about them or forget to talk about them at some point. So that's kind of my spiel. Thank you guys for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe if you're on YouTube. I think I need to start uploading these to other places. So as I if I end up doing that, get off my lazy butt. I'll let you guys know. But anyway, have a good one. And I've been Andrew. This has been According to Andrew, and have a nice day.